Hello, everybody. Good day, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Judith Hitchman, and I'm one of the joint coordinators of RIPESS Intercontinental. I do this work on behalf of URGENCI, the Global Community-Supported Agriculture Network, and we are a thematic member of RIPESS Intercontinental. And I apologize for not being with you today in Colombia, but I'm in Rome at the Committee on World Food Security and Nutrition for an important policy document that is being passed and that I will mention in a few minutes. So I'm going to speak to you today essentially about the questions of policy and food and agriculture related to social and solidarity economy. Slides, please. So we're going to speak about solidarity economy and public policy. Thank you. So very briefly to remind you on the RIPESS Intercontinental UN entry points, apart from the UN General Assembly, we work very closely with the UN Interagency Task Force on Social and Solidarity Economy, with UNRIST, which is the agency on research on social development, with the ILO, the International Labour Organization, with Finance for Development and the UNDP, and of course, where I do all the work on food systems in the FAO, the Committee on World Food Security and Nutrition, and the civil society mechanism, which is actually civil society and indigenous peoples mechanism, where we work as urgency. Thank you. So we're facing two key challenges. The first today is advocating for the recognition and inclusion of social solidarity economy in public policy across UN agencies after the successful passing of the UN General Assembly resolution in April 2023. And of course, then bringing policy wins back down to national or local authority level. It's important to note that when we work on social and solidarity economy, we also need to bridge and link it to food sovereignty. And there are 7 states that include food sovereignty in their constitution: Ecuador, Bolivia, Venezuela, Mali, Nepal, Senegal, and Egypt. In the civil society mechanism, urgency bridges this huge divide between food sovereignty and solidarity economy because community-supported agriculture is an important form of social solidarity economy at all levels. And for example, in Europe, there are 1 million people who have been documented as members of CSA, and probably another 2 million around the world. So we make consistent input at national and international level on short distribution chains and their importance, as well as participatory public procurement, which is recognized now in many, many public policy documents, including within the European Union. The United Nations institutions play a key role in building policy. First of all, in realizing the right to food and nutrition, in protecting peasants and pastoralists' right to land, water, and seeds through UNDROP, in protecting small-scale fishers' rights, in protecting indigenous peoples' rights through UNDRIP, in protecting workers' rights through the ILO, and also in protecting consumers' rights. The key CFS policies that are linked to SSE implementation are, first of all, the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure of land, fisheries, and forests. Secondly, connecting smallholders to markets, which really emphasizes short food chains and territorial markets. And the policy that will be voted on in plenary of the CFS this week on reducing inequalities, where there is a complete paragraph, paragraph 8, on social solidarity economy. There is also an important mention by FAO in the elements of agroecology that includes a mention of solidarity economy as one of the key elements of agroecology. And this is an important aspect. The civil society organizations have written a handbook on connecting smallholders to markets that you can find on the CSM website. Now, what is important as well are the different levels of governance. For example, land use is globally the responsibility of local authorities. Food policy councils and the allocation of grants and subsidies for social inclusion is also local authorities. For capacity building, there are UN programs, EU, regional programs, and local authority programs. There are also national laws and policies, and there are different regional policy instruments, like within the European Union, in Latin America, and in Asia, as well as the international guidelines and policies that are created by the United Nations. One of the really difficult aspects is that the different aspects of rights are broken down into many, many different silos and different agencies. For example, the biodiversity is linked to Seeds and Biodiversity, which is the Convention on Biodiversity and the Seed Treaty, whereas the indigenous people's rights are UNDRIP, the peasants' rights are UNDROP, which are the human rights in Geneva, workers' rights refer to the ILO, and so on. And this makes it extremely challenging to have joined up relevant policy. So the challenges that we are all facing today are repression, legislation, violence, non-respect of human rights and assassinations, betrayal by our elected duty bearers, international treaties such as TTIP, TPP, ISDS, the corporate capture of legislation, such as the capture of agroecology, the capture of short distribution chains, or of our social movement successful initiatives, as well as huge amounts of greenwashing, the compartmentalization of institutions and working in silos that makes it very difficult for us to find complex adaptive situations and solutions. Another factor is that social movements require time to reach their consensual approaches, and governments tend to rush forward. And the Sustainable Development Goals and finance for development, we have the key question of how to get grassroots control of funding. Agroecology is one of the strongest and most key elements based on traditional and indigenous peoples' approaches. And it brings together both the elements of food sovereignty and solidarity economy. It is very important that we recognize collectively the peasant agroecology as stated in the declaration of the Nyeleni Forum on Agroecology from March 2015. In part 4, where we speak about local economies, promote local markets for local products, support the development of alternative financial infrastructure, institutions and mechanisms to support both producers and consumers, reshape food markets through new relationships of solidarity between producers and consumers, develop links with the experience of solidarity economy and participatory guarantee systems when appropriate. So we need to link this to the SDGs, to ending hunger, to urban-rural linkages, to food loss and waste, and of course, to mitigating climate change. And I would like to thank you for your patience, and I wish you a good day and a very successful conference. And thank you again for inviting me to speak.